The message came on a Tuesday afternoon, squeezed between a calendar reminder and a grocery delivery notification. Short, efficient. We've decided to keep Christmas small this year. It's just not really the right atmosphere. There was a pause after reading it, the kind that didn't feel dramatic enough to be called shock. More like a quiet recalibration. Then, a second message. No hard feelings. This party is no place for losers anyway. That line sat differently. Not because it was cruel, although it was, but because it felt strangely consistent. Like something that had always been there, finally said without decoration. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The narrator remained seated at the kitchen table, phone still in hand, coffee cooling beside them. The house was silent in that mid-afternoon way that amplified thought. Loser. It wasn't entirely unfamiliar territory. The word had floated around before, softened into jokes, tucked into sideways remarks. Always ambiguous enough to ignore, but something about seeing it written, clean, unapologetic, removed the usual exits. Memory didn't rush in, it unfolded slowly. The first loan had been small, emergency repairs. Just until next month, then tuition gaps, then the car lease, bridge, then medical deductibles, each request reasonable in isolation. Each repayment timeline sincere at the time it was spoken. Over years, the transfers stopped feeling like events and started feeling like background infrastructure. Automatic. Unexamined. No one ever sat down and declared dependency. It simply stabilized. Family language helped. Words like support, helping out, being there for each other. Soft phrases that blurred distinction between generosity and obligation. The narrator had accepted them willingly. Mostly, there was always mild discomfort, but it came wrapped in the moral insulation of being the responsible one. Until Tuesday. Until losers. The reply was written without rehearsal. You're right. A moment's hesitation. Then, winners pay their own bills. Send. No spike of adrenaline followed. No satisfaction. Just a peculiar stillness, as if something long pending had quietly completed. The real conflict arrived afterward. Not logistical, psychological. Withdrawing support did not feel like flipping a switch, it felt like dismantling something intertwined with identity. For hours, doubt threaded through thought. Was this petty? Overreaction, temporary anger masquerading as principle. But beneath the noise sat a quieter recognition, steady and inconvenient. Nothing about this was sudden. The narrator opened their laptop. Logged into accounts they hadn't questioned in years. Tuition portal. Lease payment system. Recurring transfers lined up in neat rows, the financial equivalent of muscle memory. Stopping them required no confrontation. Only clicks, confirmations. Administrative neutrality. Each cancellation felt less like aggression and more like removing something that had been assumed permanent without ever being discussed. No dramatic declarations accompanied the process, no speeches. Just silence and system notifications. It was late evening by the time the phone rang. The brother's voice carried confusion first. Then irritation. Then something sharper. There's been some mistake. No. A pause. You can't just, I can. Silence expanded between them, dense and unfamiliar. This is because of a joke. The narrator almost answered immediately. Almost explained, but explanation suddenly felt misplaced, like arguing over a symptom instead of the structure. It's because of years. The line went quiet. Words assembled and dissolved on the other end. This is family? Yes. Another pause. Exactly. The call ended without resolution. Neither side satisfied enough to feel victorious. Days passed, messages accumulated, some conciliatory, some accusatory, some framed in moral arithmetic, everything the narrator had been taught to anticipate. But the boundary, once enacted, acquired its own inertia. Then came the external moment, mid-morning. Ordinary weekday light. A neighbor's curious glance through the window. The repo vehicle was unmistakable in its procedural indifference, no drama. Just contractual reality arriving on schedule. The brother's voice later carried something new. Not rage, disorientation. They came to the house. I know. How could you let this happen? The question lingered, heavy with implication. The narrator considered it carefully. I didn't cause it. A long silence. I just stopped preventing it. There was no satisfying reply to that, only breathing, distance. In the weeks that followed, the relationship did not collapse spectacularly. It shifted. Conversations became rarer, more cautious, stripped of their former ease. Family gatherings grew quieter around the narrator, as if everyone sensed an invisible recalibration of roles. No one said loser again. But something else disappeared too, the unspoken certainty that the narrator's resources existed as communal property. The ending offered no triumph. No reconciliation montage, only a different kind of stability. Uncomfortable. Clear. Expensive in ways no spreadsheet could measure. And yet, for the first time in years, the narrator's generosity, whatever form it might take in the future, felt like a choice rather than a requirement.